The train screeched to a halt at Riverbrook Station, releasing a puff of steam into the cool afternoon air. Amara Wilson stepped down onto the platform, her gloved hands clutching a small leather suitcase and her heart pounding with hope. 6 months of letters, promises, and dreams had led her here, to a man she thought she would start a new life with. "Miss Amara Wilson?" The voice came from a man holding a bouquet of wilted roses. Harold Pierce, the merchant who had written to her with such warmth, stood frozen as his eyes met hers, his face drained of color. You didn't mention that you were," he stammered, unable to finish. "Black?" Amara's voice was steady, though her heart trembled. "You never asked." The air between them turned cold. Passengers nearby slowed their steps, their curious eyes darting between the pair. Harold shifted uncomfortably, looking around as if the stairs were daggers. This isn't going to work," he said finally. "You must understand, my business, my reputation. People talk. You can't love me because of my skin," she interrupted softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat, pulled out a few crumpled bills, and thrust them toward her. "This should cover a ticket back to the city." Amara stood frozen, humiliation burning through her chest. 3 weeks of travel, a future destroyed in seconds. She watched as Harold backed away, muttering excuses that sounded smaller and smaller with each step. But before he could leave the station entirely, another voice cut through the noise, deep, commanding, and calm. "Is that how you treat a lady who traveled halfway across the country to be with you, Pierce?" Both turned to see a tall man stepping forward. He was dressed simply, but everything about him spoke of quiet power, from the cut of his jacket to the calm confidence in his gaze. "Alexander Maxwell," Harold muttered nervously. "This is none of your concern." "It becomes my concern when I see a man I know behaving like a coward," Alexander replied coolly. His eyes turned to Amara. "Miss Wilson, forgive this scene. You must be exhausted. Allow me to offer you a place to rest. My home isn't far from here." Amara hesitated. She'd learned to be wary of sudden kindness. But the alternative was standing alone on a platform that had already stolen her dignity. After a pause, she nodded. As their carriage rolled through Riverbrook's winding countryside, Amara caught her first glimpse of the Maxwell estate. It wasn't just a farm. It was a sprawling Victorian mansion surrounded by endless fields and sunlight. "I don't want to be a burden," she murmured. Alexander smiled faintly. "You're not a burden, Miss Wilson. You're a guest." Inside, the housekeeper, Mrs. Foster, greeted her warmly. No judgment, no hesitation, just a gentle, "I'll prepare the blue room, dear, the one with the best view." For the first time in days, Amara felt safe. Over the next few weeks, the mansion became her refuge. Alexander treated her not as a guest of pity, but as an equal. He listened to her thoughts, asked about her teaching, and seemed genuinely interested in her opinions, something no man had ever done before. One evening, over dinner, Alexander asked, "Tell me, Miss Wilson, what brought you to Riverbrook?" Amara looked into her glass. "Hope," she said quietly. "Hope that someone would see me for who I am, not for what I look like." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe you came to the right place after all." But Riverbrook was not as welcoming as Alexander. Whispers spread quickly through town. The merchant's humiliation had become gossip, and now people speculated about the colored woman living at the Maxwell estate. Visitors arrived under the pretense of business, curious to see the scandal for themselves. Amara felt their eyes long before they spoke their words. "I've always been an attraction, Mr. Maxwell," she said one afternoon, staring out the window. "The difference is that now I have a teacup in my hand while I am being watched." Alexander's jaw tightened. "They'll get used to it. People fear what they don't understand." Then one day, Harold Pierce arrived at the mansion. "I came to make sure Miss Wilson is comfortable," he said, his fake politeness barely hiding his discomfort. "Perfectly," Alexander replied. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" Amara entered the room in a pale blue dress, the same color as the sky outside, poised, graceful, transformed. "Mr. Pierce," she greeted coolly, "I didn't expect to see you again." "The community is concerned," Harold began. "It's not proper for an unmarried colored woman to stay here." "Finish that sentence," Alexander interrupted sharply. "I'm curious to hear how it ends." Harold faltered. "We thought perhaps a collection could be arranged to help her return to Boston." Amara smiled faintly. "That's very kind, but I'm staying in Riverbrook. Mr. Maxwell has offered me a position, organizing his library." Harold's eyes widened. "You're giving her a job?" "She's more than qualified," Alexander replied. "My library has never been in better hands." What neither man knew was that inside that library, among the old records and dusty ledgers, Amara had begun uncovering something extraordinary. A hidden chapter of Riverbrook's past. Deeds, maps, signatures, all proving that much of the town, including Harold Pierce's store, was built on land stolen from her great-grandfather, Joseph Freeman, a freedman who'd once owned half the valley. Weeks later, an emergency town meeting was called. The hall was filled with angry whispers and anxious faces. Harold stood at the front shouting, "This is an outrage! Maxwell is protecting that woman to destroy our traditions!" Then the doors opened. Amara entered with Alexander beside her, holding a small leather case. "You speak of tradition," she said evenly, "but you built this town on stolen land." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara opened her case and laid out the documents. Original deeds signed in 1866, verified by state records. "My great-grandfather was forced to flee after an attempted lynching. His land was taken, divided among your ancestors, and renamed Riverbrook. I am not here for revenge. I am here for restoration." The room fell silent. Even Harold could find no words. "I propose the creation of a foundation," she continued, "to return what was taken, not through destruction, but through education, opportunity, and justice." Judge Thornton rose slowly, examining the papers. "These records are authentic," he announced. "Miss Wilson, you have every legal right." Months later, the Riverbrook Freeman Foundation was born. The old Pierce store became the town's first public library. The Maxwell estate became a cultural center, where children of every color learned side by side. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the fields, Alexander turned to Amara. "You could have taken everything," he said quietly. "And become just like them?" She replied with a soft smile. "No, Alexander. Justice isn't revenge, and it's restoration." He smiled back, eyes warm. "Then perhaps, Miss Wilson, you've restored more than this town." As they watched children laughing under the same sky that once judged her, Amara realized something profound, that true change doesn't come from power or anger, but from courage, compassion, and the will to build something better. Because sometimes the most beautiful revenge is grace.